Okay, so we have now been able to pick apart all the different parts of the scientific method. Okay, what the question is, the hypothesis, the test, the results, and then how to figure out the conclusion. Okay, so now we're going to talk about if we're actually going to test this experiment. Okay, if we're going to read into it and interpret our results, we also have to be able to pick apart the different, we'll have to pick apart all the different variables, maybe, if I can write it. Well, now it's not even important anymore. We'll have to pick apart all of the different variables, okay? All of these things are that, okay? These are things that change throughout experiments, okay? Over and over and over again. Variables always change, okay? You hear about variables in math. It's the X or the letter, okay? That is going to be the same thing in science, okay? It's stuff that can change. From equation to equation, X changes its value. From experiment to experiment, our independent variables are different, our constants are different. Nothing is the same across the board because it all just depends on what we're actually testing. Okay, to be able to identify the factors, we have to actually know what we're looking for, okay? I refer to our independent variable a lot as the IV, our dependent as the DV, okay? Just to keep it simple and wording shorter, okay? And constants and your control group, okay? These are our different experiments that we're going to look at, but let me go back and explain what each of these things are, okay? So your independent variable is what I change, okay? That's how I remember it. It is what I am in control of. If I can get this to work. Okay, that's what I change, is the independent variable. Okay, so if you are testing which kind of bubble gum blows the biggest bubble, the thing that you are changing, the thing that you're in control of, is the type of gum. Okay, so independent variable is what I change. Okay, this is what you're testing to get your results. Okay, your dependent variable is dependent on your independent. Okay, so it depends. All right, this a lot of times is like this is where we're going to get our results. Okay, so again, if we are changing the type of gum we have to see which one blows the biggest bubble, okay, your dependent variable then is going to be the bubble size. Okay, the bubble size depends on the type of gum that you're chewing. Okay, so the independent is what we're testing, all right? It's what we are going to be changing. Your dependent variable is going to be the thing that you're actually measuring. Okay, you measure your dependent variable. Always, 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 you measure it. Okay, your independent variable, again, is what you are in control of. Okay, all of these things that start with I. We are also in control of when we take measurements. So time can be included too on this. Time is usually a big independent variable that we work with because we can control when we take that measurement. Okay, we'll get into that a little bit more another time, but that is something good to remember. It's what we're in control of when we measure all of that. Okay, your dependent is what is happening because we changed it. Okay, your constant is just what it sounds like. It is what you keep constant in your experiment. Okay, this does not change. Ever. Okay, in your experiment, no matter what you're changing in your independent variable, across the board, you have to keep your constants the same. Okay, so something in this gum experiment that you would need to keep the same is your person. Okay, your person blowing the bubble has to stay the same because some people can't blow a bubble, and so if you're testing them, compared to somebody else who can. It doesn't matter what kind of gum they're chewing, they just can't blow a bubble. Okay, so something that needs to be kept constant. All right, in that case, it would be a person. It could also be the amount of time you're chewing the bubble gum. Okay, if you think of all the times you've chewed gum in your life, you have to have chewed it for a little bit to be able to blow the bubble. Okay, you can't just put the gum in your mouth and then try to blow a bubble and it hasn't gotten sticky or anything yet. Okay, these are things that would affect the experiment if they changed. Okay, the only thing that we are testing in this experiment is the type of gum versus the size of the gum, of the bubble. Okay, so you need to make sure that with constants, this is everything that would affect our experiment without meaning to. Okay, so constants are something that has to stay the same the whole entire time. Okay, your control group, this one is always kind of the hardest to figure out. Okay, your control group is what we're comparing everything to. Okay, if say we are growing plants, okay, and we want to see how much sunlight affects the size of the plant. The control group would be the one with no sun. Typically, your control group is the one that has no change and nothing special added to it. Okay, so in this gum experiment, the one that would be the control group would be your normal bubble gum. Okay, you can't have no bubble gum, but you can have your normal double bubble. Okay, so say we're comparing everything to double bubble because it says it's the best, but we need to see. So we're going to compare everything to double bubble, okay, because that's the normal one. Okay, your control group is when you compare things to, there's no change. It's the normal. Okay, remember that your control group is the normal group. Okay, it is the one that you are not changing. Okay, and then you have your experimental group. Okay, your experimental group, if you can even read this handwriting, is the one that you are changing. Okay, so this would be the extra gum, the Trident, if that is a gum, or the Orbit. Okay, these are the ones that we are testing. All right, it's the experiment. Okay, this is the normal things that you're thinking of. Your control group is going to be the one that has no change. It's just normal. You're not really testing it because you already know what's going to happen. All right, so that's going to be the differences between those. Okay, these sometimes get mixed up quite frequently. Just remember that your control is the normal. Control is normal, okay? And you only have one group of those versus experiment, you can have multiple. All right, so let's go through and try some of these out. Okay, so here it says, a study was done to find if different tire treads affect the braking distance of a car. Okay, so first let's find our independent variable, the one that I am in control of, the one that I can change. All right, so try to think of that for just a second, where it says a study was done to find if different tire treads affect the braking distance of the car. So here, we are not in control of the braking distance. That's what we're seeing, okay? The tire treads, that is going to be our independent variable, okay? We are in control of changing the tire treads. Okay, our dependent, so what is happening because we've changed the tire treads, is going to be the braking distance. Okay, that's what we're actually looking for our results. Okay, that is our dependent variable. It is depending on the tire tread. Okay, constants that we would need to have. So something that we would change that we would not change at all through the whole entire experiment. We wouldn't want to change the type of ground. Okay, so think if you live on gravel, it's harder to stop on gravel than it is on asphalt. Okay, so if we did one car on asphalt and one car on gravel, well, that would throw off the whole experiment, and we'd be actually testing something different than tire treads. Okay, we'd be testing then the type of ground, so we don't want to do that. You'd also want to keep the same car. Okay, Each car has different kind of brakes. I know this from whenever I drive my little Cruze to my husband's truck. I have to brake harder in the truck than I do in the Cruze, and typically it's uncomfortable. So you want to keep the car the same. There can be other constants, but typically we always look for at least 2. Okay, then your control group, again, this is the normal one, okay? So for this one, this is going to be where it says different tire treads. This is going to be the normal tire tread. Okay, I don't know what the normal tire tread is, so that's why I'm just going to say it's going to be the normal one. Okay, and then your experimental groups will be the changed treads. Okay, these are going to be the ones with all of the different treads that aren't typically there. All right, and so from there, we have identified all of our variables that the experiment has. Okay, so we have looked at it there and gotten it all figured out. Okay, to move on to a different one, we have different amounts of water were given to a plant to see how tall they would grow. Okay, so what we're looking for is how tall they would grow based off of the amount of water that was given. So again, we're going to look for the independent variable, and we are in charge of the amount of water. Okay, so that's going to be our independent. Okay, and then what is changing because of the amount of water? What are we actually getting our results for? Is how tall they would grow. So how tall is going to be our dependent variable. All right, so these are pretty simple. They get mixed up a lot, but you just have to think slowly with it, okay? I am in charge of what? And that's going to be your independent. I, okay? Your constants, again, what do we want to keep the same? Okay, we would probably want to keep the same type of plant, and we definitely would. Okay, some plants grow more just in general, so it wouldn't be fair to compare them to others. Okay, we'd also want to keep track of the amount of sunlight. Same sun. Okay, we all use the same sun, obviously, but we get different amounts of sunlight. So that's something else we'd want to keep the same. Then your control group, this is going to be the one with no water. Okay, I know that that's not normal, so that seems a little confusing, but it's the one with no change to it. So we can't compare the amount of water to a plant that already has water in it. Okay, so we have to, our control group's going to be the one with 0 water. So then we can compare all of the different amounts of water to that one with no water and see how much it really does affect it. Okay, and then your experimental group, those are going to be the ones with different water, different amounts of water. Okay, so you just have to think through slowly with some of these, and it starts to get a little bit easier. Okay, here we have an investigation found that more bushels of potatoes were produced when the soil was fertilized more. Okay, so we have found out that more bushels of potatoes grow. Okay, bushels is just the amount of potatoes, basically, when the soil was fertilized more. Okay, so think back. Can I change the amount of bushels of potatoes growing? Am I in control of that? No, I'm not at all. But I can control the amount of fertilized soil. Okay, so that's going to make the fertilization of soil our independent because I can control that. Okay, the amount of potatoes growing, that's our dependent. Okay, that's what we're actually getting our results for. So that's going to be our dependent variable. Constants we would want to keep the same would be water and sun. Okay, those are just simple ones. I try to keep everything as easy as possible. I don't really try to make it more difficult than it needs to be. Okay, we need the same amount of water and sun to be able to compare these accurately. Okay, if you give one more water and more soil, fertilized soil, it's going to grow more, okay, or it might drown. So you cannot, if we're not testing water, we cannot change the water. Okay, our control group, this is going to be the one with no fertilizer. Okay, that is normal, and then we're also able to compare the amount of fertilizer to the one with no. Okay, just like the one above, the one without anything is easier to compare everything to. Okay, then your experimental groups, these are going to be the ones that get fertilizer. Okay, all of the different groups that have fertilizer, those are going to be those, the experimental groups. Okay, and then for our last example, we're going to do students measured the temperature of the water at different depths in Lake Dumbledore and found that the temperature varied. Okay, so are we in control of the temperature of the water? No, we can't change the temperature of the water, but we can control the depths that we measure it in. Okay, so the depths of the water is our independent, because that's what we can control where we test it. So we can do that. But we can't control the temperature, so that's going to be our dependent. Okay, our constants, so things we want to keep the same. Well, we'd want to keep the same lake. Okay, we'd want to keep the same thermometer. Okay, different thermometers measure differently sometimes. Some are better than others, so we'd want to make sure we're keeping the same one to actually be able to compare. And then your control group, this is going to be the one, it's actually going to be at the shallow, okay, 0 depth. Okay, we can compare everything to the one at the very top, okay, the surface. So the surface is going to be our control group. And then our experimental group, those are going to be all the others. Okay, those are going to be the different depths. Okay, so all you have to do for this stuff, is take it apart little by little. Okay, work your best slowly through it all and just think out loud. Okay, thinking out loud is the best way to get through this. So that's how we will pull apart these different things. You guys will have an example, and you'll make sure you want to complete the assignment for today. This video, though, is a good reference. If you've taken any notes, make sure you start keeping them all in the same place, so that way you have them when school starts, because we will still be doing this when we get back. Okay? Again, if you have any questions, I'm always sitting on Zoom, and you can always shoot me an email.